way inside the Capitol. You're seeing the police presence increase on the outside, but there are people inside the actual Capitol building, just outside the Senate chamber, and both the House and Senate have now adjourned or paused this entire process because of the security concerns. What was supposed to have been an orderly, even ceremonial electoral college certification process had been suspended and was devolving into chaos inside the Capitol building. I stayed in the chair, commenting on the horrific images as they came in. We wouldn't get a true sense of the scope of the breach until a few hours later, when cell phone videos and other images started to surface. January 6, 2021, was a moment that will be in the history books, a sad chapter for our country. At the time, I happened to be putting the finishing touches on this book, about another unsettling chapter of our country's history. To Rescue the Republic is the story of Ulysses S. Grant's resolve and heroism in times of unparalleled turmoil for our nation. Grant was perhaps best known as the commanding general of the Union armies during the Civil War, but he also showed his strength as a leader on Reconstruction after the war and during his presidency. In his final days as president, he rose to the challenge of preserving the Republic during the contested election of 1876, when violence threatened to once again overwhelm the nation to the point of war. As president, he led the effort to craft a resolution that would be accepted by both sides and head off a potential second civil war. It so happened that this 19th century election drama was the centerpiece of my book. Now here I was, watching the violence unfold on Capitol Hill in reaction to the 2020 election, while writing about President Grant's actions after the election of 1876. Two defining moments in history brought together on January 6, 2021. The heartbeat of our republic is the electoral process, in which the people declare their choice of president freely and fairly. But what happens when the fairness of an election is in doubt, when the freedom of the people is constrained, and when the divisions on the public square strangle the process? This was the case in 1876, as the growing toll of the war and Reconstruction on the South began to undermine progress in several key states. Those states issued two sets of electoral votes, one for the Republican, Rutherford B. Hayes, and one for the Democrat, Samuel Tilden. Having won the war that almost destroyed the United States and cost more than 600,000 lives, shattered the economy, and left 4 million freed slaves to an uncertain fate, Grant now faced the mission of healing the deep wounds in the body politic, which was in jeopardy. I was drawn to the clear parallels between Grant's time and our own, and in particular to the final drama of his presidency at the 100-year mark of our nation's life. The fate of the United States was once again at stake, not on the bloody fields of war where Grant had served so valiantly, but in the constitutional crisis of a disputed election. In the midst of a real constitutional crisis in 2021, the story of Grant in 1876 took on new meaning. I could see across the landscape of our history that there had been those crucial times when everything we stood for was at risk, when divisions were so deep that there were two separate realities being experienced by the citizenry. What did we do in the past to survive such a moment? And what do we do now? Since the publication of my first presidential biography, 3 Days in January, Dwight Eisenhower's Final Mission, I've been writing about American presidents at defining moments in our nation's history. These presidential lives have been fully recorded by historians, and I've never tried to compete with their works. I like to say that I'm a reporter of history, not a historian. I try to bring a fresh reporter's perspective to the lives and times of U.S. presidents, not only to look through a soda straw into singular events that changed history, but also to find a parallel in our own times. In this way, I hope I've been able to give new meaning to what are considered familiar tales. As a reporter, I'm an observer of living history who believes that